Good morning, second grade. Today is Thursday, May 28th, 2020, and it is our 167th day of school. We have 3 more days to the next friendly number of 170. Let's see what's happening with Roz today. It got really good yesterday. Cows grazed in the pasture. Wind rustled through the tall grass. Clouds drifted over the fields. Farm machines rumbled and buzzed. Milk flowed into bottles. Bottles were packed into boxes. Boxes were loaded onto the milk truck. The truck drove away full and returned empty. Children romped around with their dog. A man sat at his desk. A robot dreamed of escape. Hilltop Farm was home to many birds. Swallows were always swooping low over the grass and picking off insects. Crows cawed from the fields like a gang of hecklers. At night, owls glided above the countryside, silently searching for furry little animals. The robot was stuck on the farm, but the birds were free to go wherever they pleased. Lucky birds. One day, Roz was standing in the pasture, admiring a hawk as he soared through the sky, when the cows began grazing around her. Their slow footsteps crunched in the grass, their teeth chewed and chewed, their tails flicked at flies. All the while, Roz stood there, staring up at the hawk. And then came Lily's soft voice. "What are you thinking about, Roz?" The robot turned to the calf. "I am thinking about Brightbill," she said. "It was not so long ago that I was watching my son soar through the sky. That seems like another lifetime." "You must hate your new life," said Annabelle. "I can't say that I blame you. Farming looks like such grueling work." "Actually, I like farming," said Roz. "Somehow it feels right to spend long hours working with machines and tools and crops and animals. But I miss my old life on the island." Tess had a mouthful of dandelions, but that didn't stop her from speaking. "Maybe you should start thinking of this farm as your home. The island is awfully far away. There's a good chance you'll never make it back there." "Don't say that," cried Lily. "Roz just has to make it home. She needs to be with Brightbill and her friends." "Tess is right," said Roz. "I may never make it home. If I were a bird like my son, I could fly home all on my own any time I wanted. But I am only a robot." Nobody spoke after that. The cows went back to grazing, and Roz went back to admiring the hawk. Her eyes followed the bird as he soared through the sky, free to go wherever he pleased. The children wandered out from behind the farm buildings, through a clearing, and over to an old oak tree. It was the same tree their father had climbed when he was a boy. Mr. Sharif's initials were carved into the bark at the bottom of a long list of initials. For generations, all the Sharifs had carved their initials into that tree, going back to the ancestors who first built the farm. Someday the children would add their initials to the list. Beneath the leafy branches was a scattering of acorns. Jad cleared a spot for himself, sat down, and pulled a small computer from his pocket, while Jaya climbed above. The siblings spent the afternoon here, lazing around the tree until the robot marched past carrying big, heavy toolboxes. "What you doing, Roz?" called Jad. The robot stopped. "The drone has crash-landed again. I am going to fix it again." "Do you need any help?" "I do not need any help." "I'm bored," said Jaya, her legs dangling above her brother's head. "Can you do something fun, Roz?" The robot put down her toolbox and said, "What would you like me to do?" "I don't know," said Jaya, thinking hard. "Can you do a backflip?" "Yes, I can do a backflip." A grin spread across the girl's face. "Roz, I order you to do a backflip." At that, Roz crouched, and then she leaped into the air, flipped backward, and gently landed on her feet. A perfect backflip. Jad had put his computer away, and Jaya jumped down from her branch. The children were impressed. "What else can you do?" said Jad. "Can you juggle?" "Yes, I can juggle." "I order you to juggle some of these acorns." Roz walked up to the tree, picked 3 large acorns from the ground, and began juggling them in perfect rhythm. Jaya studied the robot's movements and then began tossing acorns in the air as well. The first one went a little too high, the next one went a little too far, and soon they were tumbling back into the grass. "Do you know any jokes?" said Jad. "Why did the chicken cross the road?" "Never mind." Jad scratched his head. "Can you tell us a story?" "What kind of story would you like to hear?" "A robot story," said Jad. "An animal story," said Jaya. "How about a robot and animal story?" said Roz. The children smiled at each other. Then they sat against the tree and looked up at their robotic storyteller. Once upon a time, there was a robot who lived alone on an island, Roz began. She spent her time wandering across mountains and forests and meadows, and then something terrible happened. Rocks fell and the robots tumbled off a cliff. She survived the fall, but sadly the rocks killed 2 geese and smashed 4 of their eggs. The robot stood there staring at the poor geese family until she heard a tiny voice peeping from somewhere nearby. She followed the peeping voice and discovered a perfect goose egg sunk in the dirt. The robot carefully picked up the egg and carried it away, and when the gosling hatched from his shell, the first thing he saw was the robot looking back. "Mama, Mama," he cheeped. The gosling thought the robot was his mother, and from that day on, she was. The robot adopted the gosling as her son, and together they made a funny little happy family. The end. The children sat there and thought about Roz's strange story. Then they looked up at her and said, "What happened next?" Roz and the children had a new routine. Several times a week, they'd gather beneath the oak tree, and Roz would tell stories about the robot on the island. The children loved hearing how the robot survived mudslides and bear attacks and harsh winter weather. They loved hearing how she befriended the island animals, but the stories they loved most were about the robot and her son, the goose. He sounded like such a nice goose. Roz told the children story after story after story. What she didn't tell them, what she couldn't tell them, was that the stories were true and that they were all about her. The children wanted to go in on this storytelling fun. Jaya told adventure stories about dragons and monsters. Jad told silly stories about aliens in outer space. But as the children grew more comfortable with Roz, they began talking about their own lives. They talked about growing up way out in the country. They talked about their schoolmates and their friends and their family. They talked about how their parents used to work together around the farm and how perfect everything was before the accident. In an instant, their lives were upended. Their mother was gone and their father was injured. Mr. Sharif tried to keep the farm going by himself, but there was so much to do and he was so weak now. The farm machines powered along, doing their jobs as usual, but they needed to be maintained and monitored. Eventually, the machines started breaking down and the farm started falling to pieces. The children wondered if life would ever feel normal again. "This is why we got you, Roz," said the girl. "We needed you to save this place." "And that's exactly what you're doing," said the boy with a smile. Hope you have a fantastic day. The work delivery should be out today for you to get some new things to do, and I can't wait for you to check it out. So see you soon. Bye, second grade.